go.
Hey, Candace. My name's Dakota. Just want to say thank you for taking the time. Love everything you said. I have two questions. One is, what would you say the fatherlessness, what is, like, from a rate to 1 to 10 in America, like, what is, I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. Don't worry about it. It's always nerve-wracking being the first one.
Yeah. On a rate to 1 to 10, what is the scale, I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time.
No, you're totally fine. This is literally me on my podcast. Sometimes I'm like, I just don't have sentences today.
Yeah. What would you rate on a scale of 1 to 10 fatherlessness is in America?
What is in America? Sorry, I didn't hear the word.
Fatherlessness in America.
Number one. Father absence is the #1 contributor to every ill that Black America is facing, and they obscure that by just telling you the results of father absence. And this is for everybody. You look at the statistics, they always tell you white versus Black versus Chinese. The reason that people that are the most successful in our society, which are Asian Americans, nobody ever wants to talk about them, but they are the most successful, it's because their family unit is together and they have better values. When you come from a family that is together, it automatically asserts better principles for you, because when you come from a one-parent household, what typically is a scenario is that mom's out working 2 jobs and she's not paying attention to what you're listening to and what you're learning. And this is why culture steps up in a big way. This is why a lot of, and I'm speaking about Black children, but this is all children, they turn to culture and that becomes mom and dad. Jay-Z and Beyonce becomes mom and dad. What is Jay-Z thinking I should do when you put on a pair of headphones? And this is why it's been so important for me with my platform to attack culture. And people go, well, why are you talking about Cardi B? Because that's now culture. There are women that are looking up at that, singing WAP lyrics, thinking that they can become successful if they take their clothes off. We have to attack that. Father absence, #1 without question. Thank you so much. Hey.
I'm allowed to hold it? No, I got it. Okay. All right. Well, first off, I'd just like to say good evening to you, Candace Owens, and I really appreciate you for coming down here, because, of course, I'm not someone that agrees with you, but I definitely did enjoy the experience. Just being in this room around different-minded people, I got to, really understand more about you and what you, broadcast to your audience. One thing I'd like to ask you about is, throughout this entire seminar, I hear you, attacking a lot of left-wing, I would say, extreme talking points. One thing I would like to have a question about is, when it comes to public education, you said that you wanted the department to be abolished, burned down to the ground.
Yeah.
Could you elaborate more as to why you think public education is a problem?
Absolutely. So when things started going downhill in terms of the public education system is when they federalized it. Nothing good happens in the federal government. Nothing good. There isn't a single federal department that you can point to and say, hey, that runs expertly. I mean, DMV, talk about anything. Oh, that runs really well. We should really do more of that. The job of the government is to make sure that it has more employees, right? To make sure that government can grow. And their best way to do that is by creating a system of dependency. So it's counterintuitive. I'm a supporter of school choice. People should not be deemed to go somewhere that they're districted simply because of where they live. This is exactly what leads to kids going to bad inner city communities. And it's a huge reason why I am a conservative, is because conservatives believe in school choice, and they tell you that it's racist and it's wrong, and there's no reason why a child should have to go to school based on where they live and not based on where their mother wants them to go to school with their tax dollars that they're paying into. So the Department of Education has been a remarkable failure. There's not a single piece of proof that shows you that people are not reading more, writing better, we're not better at math than we were when it's been established. How can you have anything that takes that much money from the American taxpayer that hasn't given you a single marker for how it's become successful and it still is allowed to exist? It doesn't make any sense, right?
So, of course, I agree with you there. I feel like, the federal government is spending a lot of people's money on things that doesn't matter. Another point that you made throughout your event is that you feel like the cause for the deterioration of Black America was the absence of family. Do you not feel, and you specifically cited the Jim Crow era, do you not feel that the times, during that era had any effect on that, or do you feel like those?
Well, it's an interesting study. So to be clear, I'm not arguing, because this is how a reporter will take me out of context, but Candace demands Jim Crow comes back. Absolutely not. What I'm saying is that is so telling that during Jim Crow times, the Black American family was doing better. Why is that? Because we had to rely upon ourselves, our families were together, and faith was at the center of not just the Black life, but the American life. And what happened, which Black people were given an opportunity to after slavery, was that families were able to come together. They understood the importance of family being together and better values being asserted. And so I'm not at all making an argument that somehow society would be better, but we should really try to learn the lessons of why it is that Black Americans have won in terms of segregation ending, in terms of, you know, race-based policies and initiatives being gone, and in terms of, which is actually a big loss, the welfare policies. But everything that is shown is that we've gone backwards. We actually are doing worse than we were when we won all of these things. It's worth us having a discussion about it and realizing what happened. Thank you. I just want to give to more people because I feel so bad.
Yeah, so this is just like a little quick question, like just for myself. Would you like just be able to like more elaborate, like, you know, cite like what areas Black Americans were, you know, thriving in during that time? Just so I can. Like,
I'm sorry, what was that?
Like, could you say elaborate on what? Because you said that Black Americans, you know,
economically,
were economically
per household, per household, how much money people had at that time. Black Americans have gotten poorer. There has been trillions of dollars given to the welfare system, and Black American families are poorer today than when they were. That makes entirely no sense.
Thank you.
Guys, I'm going to say this. I want to get to as many questions as possible. I always feel bad when we have to cut the lines. So if everyone could just try to keep it to one question and keep the question like 10 seconds, just so I can try to get as many people as possible.
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good.
Can you please define critical race theory and what that means in K through 12 education, as well as your opinions on Ron DeSantis and his policies in Florida as it regards to critical race theory, banning it, and recently, you know, what he did with African American studies, women studies. Yeah.
So I can define it to you. I can paint you an exact illustration of it because I used to nanny for a family, and they've invoked critical race theory in New York City. Critical race theory, basically, at the nucleus of the theory is that everything can be defined by race issues. It kind of is the example that I've told you in terms of, you can shake your head no, but I'm going to tell you what's actually happening in this classroom that has critical race theory. So on the first day of school, in their liberal arts class, it's actually called a multicultural class, they were told to raise their hands. I know this is a leftist talking point that there is no such thing as critical race theory. There is. They were all meant to raise their hands, and they were meant to go around the classroom if they were white and to explain how being white privileges them. During Black History Month, they had all of the black kids. This is in a Manhattan elite $50,000 per year school. They inserted critical race theory, and this is how it changed overnight. During Black History Month, they had all of the black students come up on stage, okay, and shout at all the white people about how they didn't understand all of the things that they had lived through as a black person. I see that you're chuckling. This is happening inside of classrooms, so we can't pretend that this is like an invisible thing that's not happening, okay? African American culture, you think that in these classrooms when you're taking African American studies, you're learning about black history. I have never in my entire life seen black people more ignorant about their history than today, right? What they're actually teaching them is how to constantly see yourself as oppressed and how to see yourself through the vein of white people, like I said before, a game of opposites. Well, the reason why you're not getting ahead in life is not because you can't read, and we won't teach you how to read or teach you how to write or teach you how to learn any science, but because of the color of your skin and because of white people, which you need to go out and attack. And you're never attacking the one thing that is disadvantaging you the most. This is the same for women, right? It is an entire theory built upon the idea that the color of your skin determines your outcome, and it is causing friction in our society. It is not because of racial disparities. It is because people are being taught to think in a way that is going to always make them race to the bottom. So there you are. I know so many students, and in every classroom it takes a different shape, but this is like some weird CNN thing where they're like, what is critical race theory? It doesn't really exist. And it's like, no, this is actually happening in classrooms, and it should terrify people because no one should be learning like that.
Yeah, I mean, I did a lot of research on critical race theory, and even with the amount of research I did, I truly don't have a full grasp on it. But what I do know, it is a legal theory, right? And it is not yet implemented through K through 12 education. And
it is there. I'm just telling you it's there. I know that you might think that because you research,
please finish?
But I know these families that are impacted by it.
The way that it is implemented in education is as a educational lens to look at things that have happened in the past. So, for example, you would have when they desegregated schools, right?
Go ahead. I'm going to let her finish. Go ahead.
So when they desegregated schools, they would look at that as, did they desegregate because it was time, or was it because when, during the Olympics, black people were in the USSR, and they saw that they were being treated well by white people, and it made America look bad? Was that the reason, or was it because...
Yeah, I know that is the sale and that is the pitch, and that is always the problem, is that what they tell you things are going to be, like welfare policies, this is going to help black Americans get ahead, and what we're actually going to do is help people get ahead. COVID policies, we're going to give you trillions of dollars, and we're going to give you money. It is just that the actual idea and the practice, the application of it are very different, and the Department of Education knows exactly what it's doing. It's ever intentional. And what they're really doing is stoking racial divide. I've never seen this much hatred of black people towards white people not wanting to be around black people. This didn't happen in the 90s. We were all like wearing overalls and talking about Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck. You know?
I think that we have to try not to make this a catch-all, multicultural idea for everything that we hate about liberals, right? Yeah. Because I think that every single, leftist, thing that every liberal uses to say racism, ism, everything, they say it's CRT, right? Yeah.
Well, I don't know if it's always CRT, but CRT does exist. But I do want to be kind and let other people get other people speak.
I know wisdom doesn't grow in everyone's garden.
I get what you're saying. Right? I totally get it. But it does exist. Oh, yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Next question. Really, guys, 10 seconds. So I'm going to cut off.
Gotcha. I just had a question about, in Louisiana, we rank around 49 or 48 in regards to education. What is the conservative solution to low-income education in the South?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear your question.
What is the conservative solution to low-income education in the South? These schools are chronically underfunded.
School choice. Yeah.
Can you explain that if you don't?
I think I just did, so I'm going to try to get to another question. But so basically, right now, the public school system exists that depending on where you live is where you have to go to school. So a lot of people that come from low-income families are being absolutely forced into terrible school systems, like in Chicago and Baltimore, which I talked about earlier. School choice would allow them to allocate their tax dollars so that they could have the same privileges as a person that has private schools, right? And say, which school? Let me actually shop and see where I want my children to go to school. So that's the solution. I'm a huge supporter of it. Thank you very much.
Have a good night.
Thank you for the quick question. Hey, how are you? Hey.
My question was about the usefulness of degrees that you're talking about specifically.
You have a very deep baritone voice. The usefulness of what?
Sorry.
No, it's good.
My question was about the usefulness of degrees, which you were talking about in academia and stuff. And obviously, like fixing an AC is a very useful skill, and we need that in our society. But I also think that people neglect the skills and intellect that don't produce capital or like profits for companies, which would be like gender studies or other degrees of the such. And I mean, all societies in the past have had people like philosophers and scribes that don't necessarily add profit to the society, but they still have very important roles to teach future generations.
Yeah. Here's what I would say. It's your funeral is an expression, which is, I'm not saying that you should only want to go out and make money, but I am saying that if you want to major in gender studies so that you can write long, pithy papers about unemployment, it's your funeral, do what you want. Just telling you that when you get out into the real world, you are going to have to be able to contribute something. And for some people, that makes them feel whole. I wrote papers and theories about transgenderism, totally fine. But, you'll probably end up back at a university is my point. So, thank you for your question. Hey.
Hello. So, hold on. My bad. Okay. So, how do people who work trades, who actually can't afford healthcare, like those who do get the big old piffy degrees because they're tenured professors or whatever, how do we do a proactive measure that isn't just telling the Senate and the House to all of a sudden privatize healthcare?
Yeah.
Can we help them right now to actually be able to help a father who has his back deteriorated from hard work at a plant or et cetera?
Well, let's not create a false dichotomy. It's both. Our healthcare system is a full-blown idea. It's just completely socialist. It's not an example of free markets and capitalists. The fact that you walk into a hospital, you don't know how much everything costs. You can't make any decisions. You're basically blindfolded, and you have your hands behind your back, and they send you a bill 3 months later that says, actually, you owe me your car and your life and your firstborn child, right? That is not an example of free markets and capitalism. And the reason that's allowed to flourish is because costs are hidden. There's collusion. There's the big pharma industry, which I speak about all the time. You really have to understand America represents the biggest drug cartel that's ever existed on the face of the planet. That's the truth. And they are able to execute. I mean, these were the dreams of all of the big drug dealers in Mexico, is to have an allegiance between the government and the drug dealers. It's exactly what the FDA, the CDC, and the big pharma execs are in. They're in a big pharma. They're colluding with one another, and they're stealing from taxpayers. So what I do want to say to answer your question is a temporary solution. If you say you see somebody, but they really do need your help, I believe in actual charity, not theft via taxpayer dollars. And the truth is that, and this has been proven over and over again, when you stop stealing from people via tax, so when the tax rate is the absolute lowest, this is what's been proven, and you can read this in Thomas Sowell books, people actually give more. Their inclination is not to hold their money tighter. Their inclination is to say, wow, I have all of this extra money. I'm doing well this year. The government's not going to come take 40, 50, 60%. I'd like to give it away. And that's why you have YouTubers, and I can't think of his name right now, that is quite literally curing the blind, doing a simple procedure. There we go. Who's literally curing the blind, because people should want to give out of the generosity of their heart. You shouldn't force them to give via tax dollars and deciding what's important to them. So I believe in actual charity, not tax theft. Thank you so much. Next question.
Quick question. What charities do you donate to?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
The biggest charity that takes most of my money is OUR, which is Underground Railroad, which is for sex trafficking victims. And the second one was, and now we're going to give to wherever James O'Keefe goes, but Project Veritas. Hey.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good. So I noticed you had a lot of thoughts on feminism. I'm a feminist, but
Totally
I
fine.
was just wondering, how do you differentiate between the extremism that exists in feminism, as it does across, multiple different ideologies, but how do you differentiate between the extremism and how, feminists like me think? I don't hate men.
It's a great question, and I'm glad you asked it. It's a great, great question. So what you have to realize about the left when you talk about extremism is they hack words that once had real meaning, and they take them for their own nefarious goals, right? So they'll say racism, and you'll go, oh my God, no, really, racism used to exist, but now it means organizing your pantry. That's obviously not racism. That's completely ridiculous. You see something like feminism, and once upon a time, women were fighting for the right to vote. Well, now we have that. We have equal footing. And now they're using those terms. They're hiding behind the shield of feminism, and they're doing actually horrible things in society. And I blame feminists for almost every ill that we have right now, because they've encouraged people not to act as a woman, and they bash men all the time. And I think that they have contributed the most to the breakdown of family in terms of an ideology. Now, for you,
answer my question.
no, I'm getting there.
Okay.
Now, for you, you're like, okay, but I actually am somebody that just believes in equality, that there should be equality between the sexes, right?
I think it's more culturally and socially, not necessarily in the realm of legality.
Sure, so I'm going to ask you, what is it socially, so you could call yourself something, right, that means that there's some fight that you have. What is it socially that you and I have as women that we don't have that men do? Why is there a need for you to be a feminist?
I think as women, we are undervalued when it comes to our intelligence. I think people, especially for me, as a woman who, I'm sorry, what'd you say?
Go ahead, let her talk.
For me, as a woman, I feel like a lot of people look at me and think I'm superficial. They think I'm vapid. They don't necessarily see that I could be intelligent, that I could speak for myself. They tend to automatically...
Guys, don't be rude. Go ahead.
I tend to get belittled a lot, and that comes from men, not necessarily women, right?
So you're saying in your personal capacity, men are belittling you, right? But when you talk about affecting actually a social change, this might be your personal experience, but does that mean that all women are going through this or that all women are experiencing this belittlement by men?
And see, I understand that, but I think also when I listen to you speak and you speak on why you don't like feminism, I hear a lot of anecdotal work and I hear a lot of personal experience, like your experience in that one class that you had, whereas I've had 5-6 classes in my gender studies courses, and I've never experienced anything
that's totally
like
fine.
that.
That's
ever.
totally fine.
You know
Guys,
what I mean?
They're
So
just
I just
laughing
don't feel like it's
because
fair
obviously
to
gender
take
studies.
personal
it's totally
experience
fine. Yeah, I get
and
what
put
you're
that onto
saying. I'm
everybody.
actually talking about the real world consequences of the dangerous ideology telling women that they have to take their clothes off, that they should be on TikTok. I'm talking about real world consequences.
Yeah,
I'm
but I
talking
feel like
about literally
that's
the fact that
extremism.
women are no longer, like, they're by and large all climbing the corporate ladder and that children are being ceded over to the state. So I was giving you an anecdotal example of what happened in my feminist class, but the repercussions of that are seen everywhere. What I am saying is that what I'm offering to you is not to feel like you have to give yourself an ism, right? Don't feel like you have to put yourself in a box. Don't feel like you have to put yourself into some weird social constructs. I think that what you'll find with time is that it constrains you unnecessarily. I don't have a problem with the fact if you want to identify as a feminist and you think that there is some fight that needs to be ended. I don't personally think that
Is
that's...
conservatism not a box any more than feminism is?
Well, saying that I have conservative principles, feminism is not being a conservative or being a liberal, right? You're talking about an ideology, right? A system you think
I would assume conservatism is also an ideology as well, is it not?
Sure. Conservatism is an ideology. These are the things that we believe. Republicanism, democratism, you could say that everything is an ideology. What I'm saying to you is that I would not necessarily paint yourself into a corner. You don't seem to me like you have any issues speaking up. You don't seem to me like you feel like you're constrained in any way. You're standing up here today. I would offer to you that there's never been a more remarkable time to be a woman in this society. By every statistic, we are doing better than men. That's a fact, right? Men have we are graduating at a higher rate than men. Men have higher suicide rates. That's why I said to you, despite how you're feeling, what are the real world implications that suggest to you that you are somehow beneath men? You might have a personal experience where a man...
we can talk about sexual assault everywhere, in the military, in the home.
So are these the things that you're fighting to end sexual assault?
Of course, yeah.
Okay, great. You don't have to be a feminist to fight to end sexual assault.
You don't have to be,
Men and women.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I don't believe you have to
It's
be.
a great cause.
But it's, of
Men
course, a
and
part of the
women go
ideology.
through that. I just said to him, one of the biggest things that I give to every year is for human sex trafficking. It doesn't require to be a feminist. Now, you seem really committed to it. I've said to you since the very beginning, if you want to be a feminist girl, put it on a t-shirt, wear it, put a hashtag. I'm just telling you, don't unnecessarily put yourself into a corner and to recognize that it has never been a greater time. I would offer it is a way better time in this society to be a woman than it is to be a man in the era of Me Too and false accusations. But thank you for your question. Thank you.
Candace, you speak about women returning to modesty.
To where?
Modesty.
Sure.
Practically, how
like
can
your-
we equip the next generations of women, both on the left and the right, to not base their human value in the sexual approval of men, but instead in their inherent value that God lovingly created them with?
I love that. I love your tone. I think that you can only lead by example, and so first and foremost, I criticize those things. I think we need to first fight culture by saying that this isn't cool, reminding people, and again, that goes back to what I said earlier about why I fight these cultural icons that are teaching women to degrade themselves and then turning around and saying, why do men degrade me? It's because you degrade yourself first, okay? And that, by the way, that would be a great feminist cause. Women actually talking about how we degrade ourselves every single day. When I look on Instagram and I see women half naked, it isn't men that are telling them to do that. I'll tell you that for free. I don't think there's any men left in the Kardashian household, if we're being honest. But I think that another reason that culture is swinging the other way and you're starting to see the spring of the trad wife and people that are valuing tradition is that women are starting to realize they're not happy, right? You can keep devaluing men and you can keep devaluing family, but as women age, you start to realize what happens is biology comes online and you start to realize that you actually aspire to those things that people have told you to hate. And that this is true. Your biological clock, this is not some patriarchal concept. It's a real thing that happens. For me, it was like 26 where suddenly I wanted to have a family. And then if we can have more people that are showing people and talking about the wonders of family, and we stop platforming the ignorance of people that say you can be bad all by yourself, you know what I mean? No, you can be really happy in a healthy relationship and with a family and with a man that leads your household and the man that you respect. And I hope that every day on my Instagram and on my platforms, I am giving that permission to women to value that, to value what they can add to a household, and reminding men that the greatest thing you can ever be is a leader of your own household and faithful to your family. I really believe that. Best men, best women.
Thank you.
My question is about the public school system. You mentioned that you went to the public school system.
I did.
And actually, my whole family, we have a connection to the system. My father is actually an assistant principal. I'm homeschooled. But,
You're homeschooled? I love that. That's awesome. That is awesome. I love that.
My question is, do you still think that there's hope for the public school system?
At the moment, no, because I think that the good guys are basically being threatened by the bad guys. I mean, I read a story the other day about, teachers getting fired. Now you've got like people that are like, oh, if you do this, you're a racist, and then somebody will lose their entire career. And what's unfortunately happening, and I call this post-BLM America, where people are being hired not based on their actual qualifications, but based on how they look. So I'm going to be honest, I'm not hopeful right now, and I encourage people to homeschool their kids. And I think that you are a wonderful example of why that could be great. Now, that said, I do not want to diminish the public educators. I think that especially right now, it's one of the toughest jobs that you can have. And I'm grateful for the sacrifices that they make for trying to fix it from the inside. Whether I feel hopeful or not, I'm grateful that people are staying in there and actually trying to fix it from the inside. So a round of applause to any public educator.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I would like to say to the kid, I was homeschooled too, so that's just awesome that he is homeschooled.
I love that.
So my question is a question for you for advice. I basically want to do what you do. I'm pre-law. I sit through these horrible English classes where we talk about Rwandan genocides and how it was the white people's fault. And don't get me started, it was horrible.
What?
And so I kind of just want to ask you advice on how you got to where you are and what advice you would have to any young woman who is looking to make a difference politically like you do.
I'm going to give advice to both men and women in here on what you should do. First and foremost, I told you on the way in here I was called an ableist because I thought it was stupid that a Skims ad had a person that was basically modeling underwear while sitting down in a wheelchair. You can't see the underwear, right? So this is literally just being inclusive to a point where it just becomes stupid, right? I don't mind that people in wheelchair wear underwears, but this is just kind of stupid. If I can't see the product you're wearing, it's dumb, right? And I was thinking about this because they were so offended. They were like, how don't you see why this is so great and representation matters? And what I want to leave you with is that representation does not matter. Representation is pandering. It's patronizing. It's a pat on the head. It's a check of a box. Do you think that Kim Kardashian cares about representation? Do you think when she features clinically obese people in her ads, it's because she wants to be clinically obese or she thinks it's aspirational? That woman is spending money on Wegovy shots. She's having doctors edit every piece of her face and her body. She thinks you're a fool. She's pandering to you, and she's patting you on the head and saying, there, that's enough. That's not people that value what you have to contribute in society, right? So what I want people to do instead is to say, I don't need to be patronized. I don't need a pat on the head. Now, we might not all have the same gifts. Some people are genetically blessed. One such example of that is LeBron James, okay? Now, I'm not going to be an NBA basketball player, one, because I'm not a man. Secondly, because look at him, right? He was literally born genetically blessed, and he is head and shoulders ahead of other people. So you might be a guy one day and wake up and say, well, it's not fair. They're not including short guys in the league, small guys in the league. Well, when you start complaining and you look around and you say, why can't I be that or this? What you are doing is you are engaging in a game of envy. I believe this from the bottom of my heart. I believe that God decides to give every single person a gift, right? A gift. There is something, probably a lot of things that you are so much better at, Candace Owens, than that every person in this room. There's something that you are just so much more brilliant. In fact, I'll tell you one thing I'm really bad at. It's really weird. It's almost a disability. I can never guess how many marbles are in a jar. I'm always off. I'm always off by like 26,000. It's not subtle. I can't estimate marbles in a jar. It's very weird, okay? And But people need to realize that when you are spending so much time wanting people to just include you and put you where you don't belong, you never recognize where you do belong. So the first thing to recognize is, what is your God-given talent? What are you blessed with? What are you good at? Is it communication? Is it finance? Is it math? Is it art? Do you sing like Whitney Houston? Just genetically blessed. I don't know why she can hit those notes. I really have no idea, but she can. And rather than envying that, like, when you really spend time with yourself and you realize what you are, then the next step is to take a chance on yourself, right? You have to disbelieve the system that tells you can't unless you do it this way. Well, you can't unless you get a degree. First, you have to take out a loan. Then you have to get a degree. Then you can maybe try. No, that's why when you look at kids, there's something so wonderful because they still believe in themselves. You have to take a chance. That's what America is about. When you take that chance and you make that risk, let me tell you something, you're going to fail a few times. You're going to fall flat on your face and you're going to get it wrong. It doesn't matter. Getting it wrong is okay. Failure is okay. It's about getting back up and trying again. So figure out what your talent is, believe in yourself, and recognize that failure is a part of the process. And I guarantee you, every single person in this room will be successful and brilliant at whatever it is.
Thank you so much.
Hello. First of all, I want to say, guys, please quit trying to shut people up. You're as bad as the liberals are. We're here to literally talk, okay? Anyway.
Hi.
So, it's my birthday, and I can't think of a better place I'd rather be than here, so...
Thank you.
And I was wondering if there was a time where I could get a picture with you, number one. And second of all, I wanted to ask you what you think about all the bank closures that are happening right now.
All of the what closures?
The bank closures that are happening.
That's a big, complicated question. This is a question that I give to my husband and think about the implications. I mean, eventually this was going to happen. You can't just print money forever, and you can't just keep saying, I mean, look at the SVB board. It was incredible. Diversity, equity, and inclusion. People had no real skills. There was one person on the entire board that even had a backing in finance, right? I think wokeism has become a cancer, and what I'm hoping will happen, if I'm a hopeful person, is that it will edit the behavior of these boards. They will realize that there are real-world consequences for stupidity. Don't know where it's going to end. Honestly, can't tell you. I don't think we're in a good financial place right now in Western civilization, is to answer your question, which is why I say develop real skills. Learn how to grow your own food, all of those things. I'm like a apocalyptic mindset. That's why seeds, growing stuff, like constantly thinking about how you can self-sustain within your own household, and then I don't have to cry so hard when something scary happens, like a bank collapses and it has residual effects.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you so much.